When you think of Vikings, you think of this: barbarians with horned helmets, axes, and blood. All wrong. They didn't wear horned helmets. They weren't savages, and they weren't just warriors. They were traders, explorers, poets, lawmakers, and they reached America 500 years before Columbus. I'm the Traveler, and today we're destroying everything Hollywood, TV shows, and video games taught you about the Vikings. Because the truth is more fascinating than any fiction. Between the 8th and 11th centuries, the Norse peoples of Scandinavia built a civilization that was, in many ways, more advanced than Christian Europe of the same era. They had better ships, better laws, more rights for women, and a political system Europe wouldn't match for centuries. And almost none of this gets told. First, an important correction: Viking was not a people. It was an activity. In Old Norse, Vikingur meant something like one who goes on an expedition. You weren't born a Viking. You went Viking, meaning you left home to explore, trade, or, yes, sometimes raid. The Norse peoples lived in Scandinavia, modern-day Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, a region of fjords, dense forests, and winters that lasted 6 months. Land was scarce. Feeding a family was hard. Around the year 793, something changed. The Norse started leaving. The first recorded attack was on the monastery of Lindisfarne in England. Defenseless monks, exposed gold treasures, zero military resistance. Europe panicked, and rightfully so. But reducing 300 years of Norse civilization to monastery raiders is like reducing Roman civilization to the guys who made gladiators fight. It's true, but it's a ridiculous fraction of the story. While medieval Europe was afraid of falling off the edge of the world, the Norse were crossing the North Atlantic. Around 870, they colonized Iceland, a volcanic island in the middle of the ocean, over 1,000 kilometers from Norway. Not as military conquest, as organized migration. They brought families, livestock, seeds, and tools, built a functional society from scratch. Around 985, Eric the Red, banished from Iceland for murder, sailed further west and found Greenland. He named it Greenland as a marketing strategy to attract settlers. It worked, but the most impressive part came next. Around the year 1000, Leif Erikson, Eric's son, sailed even further west and reached a place he called Vinland. Vinland was North America, probably Newfoundland, Canada, 500 years before Columbus. And this isn't legend. In 1960, archaeologists found a Norse settlement at L'Anse aux Meadows in Canada, confirmed by carbon dating. The Vikings were in America. It's archaeological fact. Now let's go east, because this is where the story gets truly surprising. While the Norse from Norway and Denmark went west, Iceland, Greenland, America, the Norse from Sweden went east. They traveled down Russia's rivers, the Dnieper, Volga, Don, and built a trade network connecting the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. 9th century Arabic coins have been found on Swedish farms, Chinese silk in Norwegian tombs, Indian spices in Denmark. The Norse weren't isolated in Northern Europe. They were connected to the entire world. In Constantinople, the largest city in the world at the time, the Norse were so respected that the Byzantine emperor created an elite military unit composed exclusively of Norse warriors, the Varangian Guard. They were the emperor's personal security, the best paid in the world. So, no, the Vikings weren't isolated barbarians. They were the FedEx of the medieval world, moving products, ideas, and cultures across 3 continents simultaneously. And now, the part that surprises people the most: the laws. While medieval Europe was ruled by absolute kings and the church, the Norse had a system that existed nowhere else on the continent: popular assemblies called things. A thing was a periodic gathering where free men, not just nobles, met to settle disputes, create laws, and judge crimes. Any free man could speak. Decisions were collective. In 930, Icelandic settlers created the Althing, the oldest parliament in the world that still functions today. 1,000 years of continuous operation. No European country had anything comparable at the same time. The Norse legal system was oral, but extraordinarily detailed. It had laws on property, inheritance, debts, assault, and even defamation. If someone publicly insulted you with a lie, you could take them to the thing. Barbarians? They had a legislative system more sophisticated than most European kingdoms of the era. And women? In the 9th century, while European women were the legal property of their husbands, Norse women had rights that European women wouldn't achieve until the 19th century. 1,000 years later, a Norse woman could own property, could inherit land. She managed the farm when her husband traveled, and he traveled a lot. She wore the house keys on her belt as a symbol of authority, and most impressively, she could request divorce. She just had to declare before witnesses that the marriage was over. If her husband mistreated her, she took half the assets and returned to her family. This was the 9th century. In Christian Europe at the same time, a woman who tried something similar would be accused of sin. And there's more. In 2017, researchers at Uppsala University re-examined a warrior's tomb found in Birka, Sweden, in 1878. The tomb contained weapons, horses, and a military strategy board game. For 139 years, everyone assumed it was a man. DNA analysis revealed it was a woman. Norse women didn't just have rights, some went to war. And to finish destroying the stereotype, let's talk about culture. The Norse had poetry, not just any poetry. Skaldic poetry was one of the most complex literary forms in medieval Europe. It used elaborate metaphors called kennings. The sea was the whale road, blood was the sword's dew, gold was the fire of the sea. A skaldic poet was as respected as a warrior. The Icelandic sagas, written in the 13th century from oral traditions, are considered by many scholars to be Europe's first prose literature. Full novels, centuries before any European equivalent. In navigation, the Norse crossed the Atlantic without a compass. They used stars, ocean currents, watercolor, bird behavior, and possibly a crystal called a sunstone that polarized light, even on cloudy days. In 2011, researchers confirmed that this crystal actually works. And hygiene. 10th century English people complained that the Norse were too vain. They bathed once a week, which was considered excessive in Europe at the time. They carried combs, tweezers, and ear cleaners made of bone. Barbarians? They were the cleanest people on the continent. So what did we learn? That history is written by the winners, and the Vikings lost, not on the battlefield, in the narrative. It was the Christian monks, the victims of the raids, who wrote most of the accounts about the Norse. And of course, they described them as demons, as barbarians, as animals without culture. The truth is different. The Vikings were explorers who crossed oceans without a compass, traders who connected 3 continents, lawmakers who created the oldest parliament in the world, a society where women had rights that Europe would take 1,000 years to match, poets who called the sea the whale road. And yes, they were also warriors. They also raided. They also killed. But reducing 300 years of civilization to the worst they did is the same as reducing any people to the worst they've done. The Vikings weren't what you imagined. And now you know. I'm the Traveler, and this is just one more story that time almost erased, but not completely.